Hello and welcome to the Sisters for Fitness Wellness Show. I'm Stephanie Gaines-Bryant. Our guest today is Dr. Imani Price. She's a psychologist, and today we're going to talk about women in the military and sexual assault. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I think it's a very important topic, and I'm happy that we're bringing some awareness to it.
Yes, and not enough awareness has been brought to it unless someone famous brings it to mind. As a matter of fact, Senator McSally recently came out and admitted that she had been sexually assaulted in the military. And I just really am excited to have you here.
Well, thank you.
You've been with us before.
Yes.
And I told you that I'd bring you back just to discuss this. And here we are.
Yes, yes. Thank you for having me again.
Now, you were former military.
I am. I did my residency, my medical residency in the Army. So everything that I know about being a psychologist, I learned in the military. So my sensitivities about issues that affect veterans, those things are very important to me.
Many of your clients, many of the people you see now are women veterans who are dealing with sexual assault. What are you hearing?
So I'm hearing a great number of them who said that the assaults happened when they were new into the military. Many of them talk about being isolated from others, not really having an awareness of where to take this information or how to let this information be known. When I worked when I was active duty in the military, and of course I'm a psychologist, so I am always a confidential reporting source. So individuals knew that they could come to mental health as well as physical health to the medical clinic and get help and support. But beyond that, knowing if you should report it or not report it, many women would be very troubled and just very confused about if it was rape, who do I tell, can I tell, what if we were drinking, and what will this say about me?
How is this happening? What are some of the instances or situations that can come about that would put a woman in a situation where she would be assaulted by a superior, for example?
Well, if you're in boot camp and you know very few people and you're told that your drill sergeants are who you go to for support or for help, then oftentimes an individual will reach out to a drill sergeant, and all he has to do is call her into his office, and things have happened there. There have been times when folks have told me that they were asleep in the barracks, and a superior called them out and said, hey, I need to talk to you about something. It's happened that way. I've had individuals who have told me that they were new on base and this superior was supposed to help them get into housing and said there's no housing available, I've got to take you to the hotel. They go to the hotel, the superior comes in, it happens there. So there have been so many instances where this has happened to individuals, but typically it's a person, it happens when a person is isolated from other people.
So is this a well-kept secret?
I would say that it is. I think that us veterans, we've heard it, we've seen it, we know that it exists. It's happened to many of us. Many of us have not come out and discussed it, but we understand that this, unfortunately, has been part of the culture.
Are people afraid to say something because once you say something, there may be retaliation? You may be ostracized? What are some of the reasons that women are not saying anything?
Well, absolutely, just what you said. Sometimes while the investigation is going on, some women are still in that unit. So if you decide that you're going to report and there's an investigation going on, you're not automatically removed from your unit, or he's not automatically removed from the unit. Sometimes you're still with that person. and people know that you have made a report. There have been times when individuals they've even gone to court about it, and folks take sides and people have opinions about it. So even when folks know that this occurs, men and women know that this occurs, people will still have an opinion about it. A gentleman told me not too long ago that he was very skeptical about women who report it because some women just want attention. Now, I don't know very many women who have volunteered to come into the military who's looking for that type of attention. Our numbers are small. So if you're somebody who's interested in having male attention, you can pretty much get it. I mean, claiming that an assault to your personhood, to your dignity has occurred so that you can get attention is ridiculous. It's chauvinistic and it's just a very misinformed.
You know, over and over again, you hear people raise the question whether it's a celebrity who has assaulted someone, whether it is some legal authority who is accused of sexual assault. Why did you wait so long? That's always the big question. There are reasons, there is a psychology behind why someone might not tell immediately, from children to adults.
Absolutely.
There's a whole psychology behind that. Can you please tell us a little bit about that?
Well, for many women, so I think that as I'm thinking through this and thinking about the women who have come in that I've had contact with, some women aren't even sure of the definition of rape. So if you aren't sure of the definition of it, and you know that this thing occurred to you, and you may or may not have been friendly with the person, it even could have been someone you were dating. Self-doubt is the first thing that usually happens. People question and wonder, and they look at themselves and their own actions in this. Even for women who absolutely unequivocally did not want this to occur and it happened, they still look and say, well, what did I do to encourage this? What was my role in it? There is so much guilt, shame, and self-doubt that goes into a person who has been violated that to bring it up, to talk about it, it re-victimizes individuals again. So individuals, most likely, many individuals will choose to just not say it, to just bury it, to pretend that it didn't exist. I remember at West Point, a young lady came in, she had been assaulted by a classmate, and she said, well, he probably didn't know that he was doing the wrong thing. And I will just let him know how disappointed I am in him. And so we talked through that. And then as we continued to talk over a course of weeks, she was then ready to acknowledge that a person that she was familiar with could do something so horrible to her.
Are authorities responding better now than they did, let's say 10, 15 years ago? Or are you saying that it's pretty much the same?
In the military?
Yes. Are authorities, if you go to someone and report, are they responding better? Are people hearing you more?
I would say yes. I can speak for the Army best. In the Army, there's a thing called restricted and unrestricted reporting. So an individual can seek help, a victim can seek help, she can have a victim advocate, who will help go to the hospital so she can get medical care, she can get all those things, and then she can decide if she wants to report it and it be unrestricted where her chain of command and CID and other people would be aware of it, or if it's going to be a restricted report where just us, like mental health and medical, the physical health people are aware that this happened, but information about who was the perpetrator and those kinds of things does not go out. So we know that this occurred and we can give her support, but she doesn't have to report his name or what happened or anything like that to anyone other than medical.
You know, for women in careers in general, there are things that prevent us from moving on to advancing to where we want to go. We know how that is in the corporate world. How has that been in the military? I know there are probably women who fear coming forward because how is this going to affect my career? How are people going to see me as a leader, as someone who can take it to the next level?
I think that's such a critical point that you just brought out, because there is, as much as I'd like to think we all bleed green, and that's what they tell us when we come into the military, we don't all bleed green. And there are still people who do not want women in the military. So as a female in the military, you're still fighting with sexism. And there is still elitism in the military. So if you are a person who has been assaulted and you come forward, then yes, there's a lot of question. People may question your leadership, your ability to command. Especially, just think, if this was a person who was not a superior to you, what does this mean for, let's say, a staff sergeant who's been assaulted by a private or a specialist, someone who's much lower ranking? Will people think that she can still command? Will people still think that she's still able to function and do her job when a person who she clearly outranks has put his will on her? So there are so many things that goes into a woman's mind when she has to decide if she's going to report or not. And yes, how this will affect her career is part of it, because there's already a stigma attached to being female and being in the military. Now, I'd like to think that is better than when there was WACS, the Women Army Corps. At least now we're all integrated into units together and things like that. But the mentalities and the ideas, they're still there.
Are we seeing men who are dealing with sexual assault in the military?
Yes, we are. And just like with women, fewer men have shared with me that they've been assaulted. But I have had men who have shared this. And for the men who have shared this, it has been being isolated from others, usually being lower in rank, and being new to assignments. So if you're new to a duty station, you don't know anyone there, you don't know the lay of the land. So if a person says, hey, we're all going out for drinks, or we're all going to do this or that, do you want to come with? You come with them, you're the new person. It's happened like that to individuals. So yes, I have heard of individuals, males, who are also sexually assaulted, but fewer of them are willing to come forward. And the ones who have come forward and shared this with me, I would say that how they have responded has been very different than the women who have shared this with me.
And how have they responded differently?
They've been more angry. Women have been more, there's been a lot of shame. There's been a lot of, what did I do? There's been a lot of, how could I have stopped this from happening? With men, there has been anger. There's been much more substance abuse, and more suicidal type gestures and ideations.
That's very sad.
Yes,
that's very
is.
sad. Now, the women you see on a regular basis, they are no longer military?
I see active duty and veterans, yes.
What has been the effects after they leave the military? What has life been for them after the military, after sexual assault?
A lot of relationship issues. If I had to just put it all into kind of a package, I've seen a lot of relationship issues. I've seen a lot of women who have been unsure about the men who have come into their lives. Many of them have had multiple marriages. Many of them have opted to not have children. Some have had children and not felt that they could connect with them for fear that this is a hard, cruel world and I have brought a child into this. I've seen a lot of women who have had difficulty staying employed. Just a lot of emotional turmoil and distress.
You know, years ago I did a show on women veterans and how we're not aware too of the fact that a lot of times when people get out of the military, when women get out of the military, you might find them ending up homeless.
Yes, it's a large homeless population, absolutely. And it's interesting, for all the women who I've met who have been homeless, all of them have been assaulted in the military.
That's what I was getting at.
Yes.
Is there some sort of connection to what happened to them in the military and what happens to them after?
Definitely there's that correlation. But unfortunately, many women who transition out of the military end up homeless. But in the homeless women that I have met, many of them have been assaulted in the military. But there are very high numbers of women who have been assaulted in the military. But since it isn't often reported, we just know that people are transitioning out, people are retiring early, or people are wanting to ETS like I did, which is just early time out of the service without doing 20 years. We know that these things are happening, but people don't always ask, what has been the encouragement? What has caused you to either shift your goal of being a lifer in the military, or shift your assignment abruptly, or some of the other things that seems to happen all of a sudden that we don't talk about?
I have a lot of my kids' friends, when they graduate from high school, they want to go into the military or they go into one of the service academies. As a matter of fact, I've got a son at the Naval Academy right now and one who's on his way.
Okay.
What should we be telling our girls about this? Not to discourage them from joining the military, but it's like this sorority of women who know this thing and they're not passing on that information.
You're absolutely right. And I think that we need to have a larger voice, women, whether we're still active duty or whether we're veterans. I think that we owe it to the young ladies who are coming into the military to talk about safety. I think the military is a great thing. I mean, I became a psychologist in the military, and I was not assaulted in the military, but there were so many around me who were assaulted that I knew that this was a big problem.
Well, how can you tell them? What can they do to stay safe?
Well, I think that one of the things that perpetrators do is they try and isolate. So one of the things that we need to encourage young ladies to do is we need to encourage our young ladies to do more of buddy system. To request, if your sergeant is requesting an audience, wants you to come and have a conversation about something, can I bring my counterpart? Can I bring my female supervisor with me? I think that if we can encourage more buddy system, if we can talk to women about situations that might make them unsafe. Let me tell you, in the military, there are no shortages of briefings on sexual assault. There are no shortages. So if having another briefing, seminar, conversation about sexual assault would do the job, then we wouldn't have it happening in the military. But it is all of those other things that we don't talk about that should be discussed. When I was working at the Air Force Academy, the Air Force Malcolm Grow, before I started my private practice, we had a briefing. And I remember saying, why is it that we never tell privates and other young enlisted individuals and that they can request to have someone with them when they're going to have a meeting with someone, or if someone needs them to go on the rifle range because they didn't like how they were shooting, supposedly. We don't tell them that they can request to have a female with them. Just like we now tell young ladies when they go see a doctor, if they're having an examination, you can have a nurse present in the room with you. We need to do more of that. And I think that, and I was talking to a veteran just last week, seasoned veterans who have seen all of this happening, and maybe many of them who did not report. What if we had a bigger voice in Congress and had some initiatives that were passed that would help allow some I don't know, not just greater transparency, but more support for women before any of these kinds of tragic things happen. I think we have like the restricted and the unrestricted, and you can go to medical after it occurs. But how do we keep people safe before any of this happens? I think that drill sergeants should not be allowed to have one-on-ones with an individual. I think there needs to be a female present in the room. I also think that when females are on duty, right? So duty can be 24 hours. So like in Navy, you might be up in the watchtower 24 hours doing duty, watching it. Someone comes in and now we have a problem. No female should be on duty alone without another female there.
And these are some of the things that we can do.
These are some of the things. I think that I think every person who is in charge of a command should be very mindful of how to keep those women in their unit and in their command safe. And I think that without doing that, then we're just never going to help lessen this issue.
For the most part, is it a superior who's doing this? So you've got that power play there, or is it some instances where folks go out drinking? Or do you see a mixture of both, or is there more of one situation than the other?
I'm seeing a mixture. I'm seeing a mixture, but there would be more of a person who's in power, or a person who is in command or leadership, and a person who's either new or who is a subordinate in some type of way. So it could be equal rank, but this person is still like the company commander or something, so they're still over you. And they're saying, hey, we've got to go to this training down in, wherever. And so you're in the car with this person, and then it can happen. I've heard so many different twists to this.
I am sure you have.
I can't even, there are assaults that have happened in ways that I never considered that it would happen.
Such as?
Such as in a broom closet. Go in there and pull out the broom, get the mops, this, that, and the other. Person goes in there, they turn the lights off, turn the light back on, people are in there.
Or has there been situations where a drill sergeant will call out certain women?
Yes. There was a young lady who told me that every night the drill sergeant would take about 4 or 5 of them, and she shared with me, now she's in a room with lots of women. There's like 30 young ladies in there. There were the same 4 or 5 who were being pulled out every night. And he was assaulting them. I didn't ask for the details, like did he pull you guys all out at once, or was it one at a time, or did he take each person? I didn't ask those details because it was so upsetting. She had never told anyone. It was so upsetting for her to even talk about it. And we're talking about this was 20-something years ago. But for her to tell me and to talk about it was so upsetting that she had a meltdown right there in the office. When I'm doing the veteran military disabilities, when I'm doing the disabilities for individuals, I say to them, I just want to tell your story. So whatever that story looks like, feel free to share that with me. There have been very few occasions when a person has not told me, well, I was assaulted and I have never told others, but I need to tell you. That happens so frequently, and we sit with that. I don't just like, oh, business. In that moment, that person is so vulnerable that we sit with it. I talk to them about it. I check in on them in that moment. I allow them to stop, tell their story as they need to tell it. Like, I'm not in a rush. If you need to start and stop, if I need to get you water, if whatever I need to do for you in that moment.
Now, as part of a disability claim, or as part of their claim, is that considered, or what is that considered? How does that factor in? And we're almost running out of time, so I'm going to just ask you to be brief.
Okay, right. So when you get out of the military, if you have any situations that occurred, that's either going to be lifelong or something that you're going to have to manage. It could be physical or it can be emotional. Then you're supposed to make that claim to the VA. So individuals who have experienced sexual assault and trauma typically have PTSD. So that's where that comes in. They have these symptoms and they have depression, they have all this stuff that's going on, and they need to put this in their claim, but the VA will say, well, how did you get it? How do we, quantify that you actually have it? So that's why I'm saying, tell your story. If it wasn't an assault, maybe you were over in combat and you saw all your people die. It could be anything. So that's where that comes up.
You are doing incredible work, Dr. Price, and we will give your information at the end of the show, but this is an important topic, and I'm glad you made time to come to talk to me today about this.
Thank you so much. I think we need advocacy. We need all voices to come together for this situation.
Indeed we do. You've been watching the Sisters for Fitness Wellness Show. I'm Stephanie Gaines-Bryant. Our guest today is Dr. Imani Price. She's a psychologist. We've been talking about women in the military and sexual assault. Have a great day.